Hi everybody, welcome to today's live stream. We have Midori Samson here. So Midori, thank you very much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I will tell you guys a little bit about Midori for those of you who don't know her. So Midori Samson is a bassoonist, educator, activist, and scholar. She's happiest participating in artistic projects that simultaneously engage these four identities. She couldn't, and wouldn't want to, seek success in any one of these areas without the other three. As a freelancer in the Midwest, she currently works in many roles as a member of the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra, the lecturer of bassoon at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, a program facilitator at Artists Striving to End Poverty, the artistic director of Trade Winds Ensemble, and a doctoral candidate in both bassoon performance and social welfare at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She holds degrees from the Juilliard School and the University of Texas at Austin. Midori works determinedly to participate in musical activities that exemplify social justice, equity, and inclusion, education and engagement, anti-racism, and peace. Thus, she travels annually with Artists Striving to End Poverty to rural India to lead interdisciplinary workshops for children. She has facilitated similar community engagement work in Austin, New Orleans, New York City, and Guatemala. Her proudest work is as the co-founder and artistic director of Trade Winds Ensemble, an organization that teaches songwriting and composition to children in Kenya, Tanzania, Haiti, Detroit, Chicago, and Eugene. Her work with Trade Winds Ensemble led to many awards, including the Joseph W. Polisi Artist as Citizen Prize at Juilliard, the McGraw-Hill Foundation Award for Music Education and Community Outreach, and a Wisconsin Idea Grant. Most recently, she traveled to Rwanda, where she helped write an original play with local artists to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide. She is looking forward to her 2021 engagement at the Flying Carpet Festival, a program for refugee children on the border of Turkey and Syria. Wow, that is really amazing, all of the stuff that you do.
It's really weird to hear someone else read it, but thank you. That was
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
interesting.
Um, but yeah, I think everyone already can tell that you're an amazing person, and we are super glad to have you here.
Thanks
So,
for having me.
yeah, before we get started, is there anything you'd like to say? Um,
No, I can't wait to hear Jasmine.
okay, great. So, yeah, I will go ahead and play everyone her recording. Okay, let's see, where is it? There it is. Okay, recording. Oh, sorry, I forgot to have the audio sorry, I forgot to have our audio turned on. So let me just restart that. Everyone, that was amazing playing Jasmine, and I will let you guys get started with a little masterclass bit. Sorry about that.
No worries. Jasmine and I just met a few minutes ago, like 15 minutes ago. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself to everyone and me kind of too.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine White. I am currently a rising sophomore at the University of Kansas, pursuing a degree in music performance with Dr. Stomberg. Right now I'm living in Phoenix, Arizona, but I grew up in Portland and I studied with Teddy Zhang for about 3 years while I lived there.
Awesome. And everyone should know that I also grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I'm also in the Evan Kuhlman lineage. So it probably everything I'm going to say to you won't be a surprise. Nothing will be new, and you're already doing so many things that I would have wanted to talk about too. But let's like give a big shout out to Evan Kuhlman because we have him in common, and it's so cool. It's really special. This is a really great performance, a really great recording, and I specifically want to applaud intonation, which is so consistent throughout and beautiful. Legato and smoothness, consistency. The fingers are working so efficiently and evenly, which is beautiful. Preparation in general, I mean, you're doing everything on the page, and that's a really good starting place. And then the recording quality is also really great. And I am curious, like, it's been so interesting for all of us to kind of like rethink and relearn how to record in this pandemic, because it's been a necessity to livelihood and being a musician. So I'm curious. I think everyone should know what equipment this was on because it was really great.
Thank you. I was actually, all this was just done on my MacBook, which is great. There was no special mics. Usually when I record myself, I found that practicing and recording with less furniture and a larger, more open room is always ideal. And I've struggled with trying to record in small rooms in the past, and it's always nice to take advantage of it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you. That's helpful to know. Now, I want to, so that's all the fantastic stuff. And I want to lean into some of that a little more, especially, let's go even further with how to be legato and sing across some of these phrases. These scale studies are little pieces of music, even though they're called scale studies, which are like two of the scariest words that we've been conditioned to think those are so scary. But what a cool opportunity to talk about harmony and how that fits together with playing legato and playing smooth. I almost think that sometimes the way you do this is a little too consistent and too tapered. And so let's find some variety within that. Let's start at the beginning because I want to put off dealing with that silly chromatic scale as long as we can. And then let's go from the beginning. I hear you doing a really nice 2-bar up and down, and then another 2-bar up and down. I wonder if, for the sake of variety, this can be a 4-bar up and down instead. Does that make sense?
Kind of. So when you say 2-bar up and down, do you mean like going up 1 bar and then going down the next bar?
Exactly. So I hear a really nice taper on the A at the end of the second bar, and I wonder if that should go through so that when we hear a taper at the end of the low D 2 bars later, that's more satisfying.
Yeah.
Can you try this just at 4 bars?
Okay.
That's exactly what I meant. Now, how does that make sense to you? Does that, what do you think?
It actually feels a lot easier to play it that way.
I wonder why. Do you have any idea why?
I think I'm just being more cautious about the way that I conserve and use my air, and
Mhm.
I'm not like blasting it all out in the very beginning.
I couldn't have asked for a better response to prove my point, so thank you. Um, when you before you were coming away from that A, and it the way you were pacing the air to do a nice taper meant that the last two beats of that second bar were not as smooth as they could be, and then the same way coming back into it. It's the fingers are so tricky up there, and so when you can lean into the air and have a lot more air at the top, it's going to be smoother, and it's also more beautiful, and it's a longer phrase. Can you do it one more time? Awesome. And that is a much more like ideal and like first like welcoming first phrase, I think. What you were doing before was great, and this just means a little more variety and an extension of what you were already doing. Can we go on, because the harmony gets really interesting here, and maybe a 4-bar phrase won't make as much sense in what's coming up. So can you play the next, can you go all the way to that top A in the 4th line? I think we must be we're hopefully looking at the same edition. Can you go all the way to that A and stop? And let's think about how you can pace this phrase now.
Okay. So do you want me to just pick up where we left off?
Yes. Okay, perfect. So this is good. This is a good opportunity. What do you hear in the harmony that is more dramatic than something we've heard so far?
Well, I think I'm hearing most of the change happening around measure 9 and 10, where we have the accidentals, and I think it's great because it like adds more color and flavor to what we already have heard.
Totally. Exactly. It does. The harmony gets very interesting there, and it goes to this really dramatic F. And again, I hear you doing a beautiful, graceful, and in tune taper away from that F. But it's so dramatic. So can you sustain the drama by, just like how you did at the beginning in that second bar, not coming away from it, and it's still extending, the phrase is continuing in the F natural. Let me see if I can do this. It's been a couple years. Do you know what I mean? The F sings, it vibrates a lot, and the F right after it is not softer and it's not shyer, but it's pretty dramatic. Can you try what I just did and keep drama in the F?
Okay.
Yeah, somehow, even across Zoom, the intonation sounds better, the fingers sound smoother, the tone is much more resonant and loud. And I just asked you to focus on like vibrating and continuing the air through one note. That's pretty cool. So like when we center the focus on like a drama note, an apex, suddenly the stuff around it improves too. That's pretty cool. Tell me about how that was on your end.
Um, so in order to just like make the F come out more, I try to open my throat more and just bring in the quarters and try to just go forward without the least amount of tension as possible. And I think that really helped me with the other notes around it because I was so focused on this more open, relaxed embouchure that just carried through everything else.
And what you just said about corners and the opening of the mouth, that's like so often a fix for so many things. And again, it's interesting that just that one thing on that one, focusing on that one spot fixed a lot of things around it. I want to continue because one of the other tricky parts of these scale studies is the rests and how sometimes maybe you don't feel this way, and if you don't, good for you. But they can feel really awkward, and they can feel really like suddenly there's no energy, and like how do you come in after a rest? And I think we have 2 rests in this piece, and they're a good opportunity to talk about some of the stuff we're already talking about. So can you go from the same spot and then continue to the low F sharp? Great. The F was the F natural was even better this time too. And now maybe you're hearing what I'm hearing, which is that playing the F sharp in that way informs how the top A should kind of be played too. And now that you're sustaining through the F, the beautiful taper you did in the recording doesn't necessarily work on that A anymore. The A now kind of begs to be sung through also, just like the F in the bar before. And that's another way to solve the issue of the awkwardness of the rest. Can you do this where the A is a little more sustained so that the energy can continue through the rest, and then you begin the next A just as you left the one before? Let me see if I can do it. Do you see how I'm trying to hold the tension through the rest?
Yeah.
You'll do it better than me because you are studying this right now and I'm not. So why don't you try? Great. And then, yeah, since you held the tension up high, we can finally kind of come down on the F sharp. And you're doing that taper so well. Now, for this long rest, what I'd like you to do that's a little different than the recording is, can you, same idea, can you leave the F sharp, wait for the rest, and then begin the B at exactly the same dynamic and articulation and everything that you left the F sharp on. This is hard to do for me.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Start.
I don't know. The top A.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What does that do for you? What does that feel like on your end?
it makes it easier for me to just. I think it's easier for me to just make it go forward with that kind of approach, where if I am just focusing on maintaining that same energy through the rest, because it gives me a more clear focus on the path that I want to take with the rest of the music after I start back up again.
Right, right. Yeah, so what does that mean for the stuff after for you?
It's just like before, where I'm being way more cautious about my energy, about my breathing, and it's able to come out easier because I'm more relaxed. I'm not going forward with premature tension.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to help. The last thing I wanted to do with you was the couple of like silly staccato suddenly we have articulation bars, um, and doing this kind of like starting the B from exactly the place you want to in a very intentional way will help with that upcoming articulated stuff. So can you do like the last two beats before the F sharp so we have another chance to do the long rest and then continue until like a little bit through the articulated passage.
Okay.
Yeah, so somehow this must be because we're both like Evan Kuhlman brain right now, but somehow just having you connect across the rest solved so many things that I wanted to work on based on the recording, which was I felt before that the D that comes before the articulation, that D didn't feel quite enough like an arrival before. Um, and with such a like harmony that's a run-on sentence, it needed to feel like an arrival. Did it feel that way for you too? Yeah, that's so interesting that just thinking about the rest and how to come out of that rest inform that D. And then also after the articulation in all of this, sorry, in all of that mess, another run-on sentence, you had more landmarks that made the harmony make sense and it made it feel a lot more easy to follow. Great. I think to summarize, can you summarize some of these big ideas?
Um, well, I really liked what you talked about when we talked about it first with variation, trying to expand my ideas, what I'm trying to apply, how that can be helpful with maybe arrival points, feeling a lot of arrival points, and just also talking about when is it appropriate to have a gentle taper versus loud, resonant, clear arrival. And I thought that was really great that we had the opportunity, especially to talk about rest and carrying and continuing the same energy through the rest. So it really helps because if you maintain that level of focus, then it helps just everything else to come into place. For me, it felt like a domino effect almost. Like if one thing went wrong, everything else kind of went wrong. But it's really the foundation of just starting and ending the notes. Really.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, thank you. This was fun and it sounds great. Good luck with the rest of this book. Teddy, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Thanks, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Okay. Let me change the view. Yeah, so that was really amazing. And now we'll move on to kind of like an interview slash Q&A portion. So for everyone watching, if you guys have any questions about anything that Midori has done, her work, activism, please leave it in the comments below. And so, Midori, why don't you just, for those of you who might not be completely familiar, why don't you tell everyone about kind of what your activism, what you do?
Well, since we're already talking about Evan and teachers and like lineage, I should say that in my studies, even in high school with Evan, and continuing into my undergrad with Mr. Morelli at Juilliard, I I've had these two teachers who were so compassionate and generous and curious about my interests outside the instrument, or my interests with using the bassoon in a different way than the careers of the people who I looked up to. And so I was so thankful for teachers who kind of like nurtured that spirit in me. And they have always inspired me to want to be the same kind of generous, compassionate teacher that I thought they were. That said, I was also really, in my undergrad, dissatisfied with just playing, and knew that I was happiest, like you said in my bio, doing activities that were off a stage or with a wider variety of audiences. Um, so during my undergrad, I got really involved with an organization called Artists Striving to End Poverty, and it's an organization I still work for. And they're in New York, so I was lucky to be close to them. And their mission is to connect teaching artists to communities of children around the world who don't necessarily have arts programming already, but they connect teaching artists with students to teach. And I first had an experience going to the Philippines for about 4 weeks with A-Step. And this is my family's from the Philippines, so this was very personally liberating for me to go do this. And I was never teaching bassoon. That was also really important to me. It was always teaching songwriting and composition, because I think that's one of the most amazing ways to uphold a child's creative voice, and affirm their identity and the music they want to be writing. So during my involvement with A-Step, I continued that for my whole degree and into my master's, even in Texas. And simultaneously, I was beginning Trade Winds Ensemble, another organization that takes a social justice stance to teaching music. And we partner with social impact organizations around the world who are already providing the students they serve with so many like hard skills, but again, don't necessarily have arts programming. And so we always ask in our collaborations with these partners, how can we help support your mission using music? And that's, again, usually through composition workshops that affirm the creativity of the students they work with. So my activism, I guess, is very educational. So educational experiences that try to take a social justice stance. Yeah, that's mostly what I do now. And now I have this kind of new version of it where in my college teaching at UW Stevens Point, I'm having my students think about the social impact that their playing can have. For example, I have a policy where like any recitals that they give on campus need to be repeated somewhere off campus. And this is a small idea, but it begins to like hopefully instill in my students the habit of thinking about the social impact that their playing can have.
Yeah, I think that's amazing what you do. I think That's something we really need in the world, especially right now. And yeah, thank you. Let me get to another question here. So, do you find that your work helping others also contributes to your playing and vice versa?
I'm certainly not in this to reap the benefits of that, but I can't deny that having just a more diverse set of experiences playing the bassoon than I would if it was my job to play all the time in a hall. So it certainly, of course, it impacts my playing, and I try to be really careful about not being exploitative in that. But I will say that having different experiences playing means that the stuff I was really trained to do, like show up, the stand is there, the chair is there, it feels good, the hall is air conditioned and comfortable, the audiences, they I don't have like they're already there. All of the like logistical things that we tend to take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
When I show up to one of those performances, that's so much easier. And so I haven't really dealt with performance anxiety in a long time because everything is easier than a lot of the other experiences I've had performing outside of a hall. And I also don't take it for granted when those things are available already. I used to really deal with a lot of performance anxiety, but also realizing that most concerts like shouldn't be scary. Things like I feel like sometimes, of course, an orchestra concert matters, but does it matter as much as playing from completely from my heart a piece that a child composed and that I've been tasked with like playing as best as I can? To me, that matters a lot more. And so having that perspective means that I can enter traditional concert experiences thinking, this doesn't matter, this is easy, I got this, instead of a lot relies on this going well, like I do when I am playing the pieces that a child composed, for example. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of that big, more better perspective, not taking things for granted. Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah, so I mean, you kind of touched on this in the beginning, but you said that you're inspired by Mr. Coleman and Mr. Morelli, both of who I met before and are super nice. Mr. Morelli actually did a stream a couple weeks ago.
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah. So were there, any specific things that inspired you to start? How did you kind of stumble upon the artists striving to end poverty? What was really the start of all of it?
There are a few things. Practically, I mean, I think when I started doing this work about 10 years ago, this was like very kind of new in the conservatories, but Juilliard was always really ahead, I think, in doing this really well, earlier than some other music schools. So I was in an environment that already was nurturing this, and there were already kind of like frameworks in place for me to look at, like A-Step, which kind of founded sort of coming out of Juilliard. So practically I was around that, and I kind of had that modeled to me by especially artists in other disciplines like drama and dance. On a more like big picture, like existential level, my mother is a nurse, and so I really look to her for inspiration for nurturing and caring. And then my father is a really hardcore activist, like on the ground, protesting, raising his voice in Portland. which is such a scene for activism. So I've looked at both of these people who are coming to kind of helping the world in two different ways, and that has certainly informed my picture of what action can look like. So that also played a role. And then I also want to shout out Kristen Wolf Jensen, who you'll see in a couple weeks, I think, hopefully,
Yes.
doing one of these, who was my teacher in my master's, who was one of the first people who kind of said, she really affirmed this interest of mine. And again, I was, couldn't really see around me successful performers who were really dedicated to this too. Now there are so many, and there are so many people who came before me who are doing this, but I didn't really see that at the time. And she was someone who really nurtured me to take this path and really lean into this passion. And then finally, I have been really lucky to work with Yo-Yo Ma in the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, which is a training program of the Chicago Symphony. And as a fellow, we did a lot of solo chamber music, orchestral, and community engagement appearances all over Illinois. And some of these projects were curated by Yo-Yo Ma, and he's someone who I constantly look to for authenticity and heart and just really joyful, collaborative activism and community engagement.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I've seen videos of him playing, and it's kind of just like a moment of joy. That he's he's really spreading. It's always super positive.
And sometimes we forget that that's like what it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is amazing. Let's see. Someone asked, how might someone start to do what you do in creating a positive impact, maybe just in their own community? Do you have any advice, opinions?
I think, well, thank you for saying that it makes a positive impact, but I think approaching it with like a humbleness and like not assuming it will make a positive impact is a good place to start.
Okay.
I also think it's so important to approach everything with authenticity again. It can cause so much harm if there's inauthenticity. And I would never want someone to try to try to make my version of this work for them, or anyone else's version of activism and engagement work for them, because it will be inauthentic and so much harm can come from that. I think it's a great starting place to go deep in oneself and tap into like a cause that you care about, a piece of your own identity that you would want to uphold in someone else too. Beginning from that place, and then balancing that humbleness and like willingness to listen with also not needing to get permission from anyone. I know that we are, especially after the murder of George Floyd, are in a place to feel very active and are called to action. And I think we'll see a lot more of that same fearlessness than maybe 10 years ago when I was starting to do this work. Before, I really needed to just do my thing and be fearless about it and not ask for permission, because there wasn't really a rule book written about how to do this yet. So I think I hope to see some of that fearlessness now too, combined with not making assumptions, not assuming someone needs help, and not assuming someone needs to be served. That's not true. And that if you begin with collaboration, there's so much that can be done. So getting in touch with an organization and saying something like, how can I serve your mission? And how can my music contribute to that mission? I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, being collaborative, being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So is there anything that you find, you said that you are happiest when you are bridging all four aspects of your life, like music and activism.
Mm.
Is there something in it that you just find particularly rewarding? Does it, yeah, I mean, is it something that you've always just, it's always felt right for you?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What I find rewarding is um, learning from disciplines outside of music to make music engagement better. So, for example, my DMA right now, my doctoral degree is in bassoon performance and then also in social work, social welfare. And I am finding how valuable it is to look at the discipline of social work to understand how to be a better music educator and a better like artist citizen by looking at a more like scientific and social justice approach. So I find so much reward in learning from things outside of music. Music can kind of get boring for me sometimes, and there's so much more to be learned if we like get off the page and work with people who aren't in total control of like this instrument.
Yeah. And, just before we start, kind of closing up our session, is there anything you kind of want to say to the audience? Any parting words?
I want to say thank you to you for hosting
Yeah.
this really cool thing and bringing some of that like fearless enthusiasm to a really cool platform. And good job. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being here. I think it was amazing to hear from you, kind of learn about your work in activism and how important it is to be authentic, kind of that collaborative spirit. We have people in the audience saying that they really like your words about authenticity and that you're super inspiring. I think that's amazing. And yeah, so thank you so much for being here. And before we go, I want to talk about our amazing sponsor, Barton Kane. They are super generous people. Kind of speaking on the topic of generosity and all that stuff. Barton Kane is amazing. They're super generous to be able to help me. A lot of their times they're making donations to various organizations. They're super active in the community. So if you're ever looking for some really good GSP cane, please check out Barton Kane. Amazing customer support. They have eco-friendly packaging, so you don't even have to worry about any sort of waste. Yeah, they have a huge variety of shapes, profiles. I use the Billy Short Hertzberg shape profile.
I use the Kristen Wolf Jensen one.
Oh wow, it's amazing. Yeah, all these people, Barton Cane is everywhere. They are amazing. So if you ever need GSP cane ever in the market, please check them out. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring us. And yeah, so I think we'll be done for today. Thank you again, Midori, for being here. Thank you for Jasmine for playing. And everyone stay tuned for next week's artist. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.